75% of Americans believe in UFOs. 30% of Americans believe UFOs are vehicles from other worlds. And 3% of Americans believe they have been abducted by aliens. That's over 8 million people. They're out there, aren't they?
Welcome to the UFO Files Show with your host, Jerry Pippin.
Hello, everyone. This is Jerry Pippin, and here it is, November 4th at 7 o'clock Eastern, and I'm live by the phone. We're going to try to do some updates every Monday on our UFO show. I'd like to thank Inception Radio, by the way, for continuing to give us the time slot and the programs by rerunning them. Over the past year, as you know, I've been suffering from several illnesses, and including colon cancer, and I had a little problem with my bladder, and the good news is that that's cancer-free, and I have had a treatment on the prostate, and basically I think in another week and a half I'll be back to normal on that. I am walking around, and I am at my home studio, and I'd like to thank everyone that's been loyal to us and checking us out at Inception Radio, and especially I'd like to thank everybody at Inception Radio for all their support and the good wishes. And I thought I'd spend a little time tonight talking about why I do UFO shows. A lot of people have asked me that over the years. As you know, I started doing syndication shows from Las Vegas and doing basically celebrity interviews and entertainment shows. And from that, I kind of got interested in Area 51, and since it's right there. And we did a few UFO shows, got good reception, good ratings, and so we've been doing them ever since. And actually, I'd done UFO shows off and on with my talk shows all the way back to the 1960s. And a lot of people in the present day that weren't around in the late 50s and 60s don't realize how active UFO reports were back in those days and how interested the American public was. The campaign to discredit everybody in the UFO business really didn't start till a little later and reached its apex, I think, about the 1990s. And they're still going strong, trying to get us to, be discounted completely. And so I wanted to spend a little time talking to you why I do UFO shows. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like you to stop and think for a minute. Think about a clear November night, crisp, clear skies, and look up at the stars. Now, the next thing I want you to do is visualize that you're on a beach. Any beach, I don't care whether it's the Mediterranean or the Pacific, the Atlantic, in the South Pacific, wherever. Now, you're laying on that beach, and you reach in with your hand, and you grab some sand, and the grains of sand trickle through your hand. Now, scientists have come up with a hypothesis, something they can't prove completely, but they have pretty close evidence that it's true. And that is, as many grains of sand on all the beaches on Earth, that's how many stars there are out there. Now, I submit to you that we now have found planets circling the stars. So you look back at those stars and you see that they're all suns just like ours, and many of them have planets rotating around them. Now think about this for a moment. Do you really think we're alone? I think the odds are pretty steep that we may not be alone at all. And next thing I want to talk about is the fact of the UFO reports. This is not just one report. Now, we're going to talk about Roswell, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the whole thing about it, and I want you to think about this, is that, there have been reports of flying saucers, lights in the sky, pilots in the military, in commercial aviation. They've seen them come up close and personal. Remember back there when the Iranians had an encounter with some UFOs? Actually, there were 4 Iranian fighter jets. This happened in the 1970s. And what they did is they tried to go up and intercept some UFOs over the capital of Iran. And one of the pilots thought that the UFO had shown some inclination maybe to try to shoot him down or whatever, so he armed his missiles and pushed the fire button, but guess what happened? Nothing. That's right, they have been disarmed completely. And it's a pretty famous story. It has a lot of credibility to it. And here in the United States, we have all kinds of stories about things, close encounters, people saying they were actually picked up by UFOs, talked to extraterrestrials. Now, I submit to you that many of them might make it up, but I doubt that they're all that creative. I doubt that everyone that comes on our show, and we've had hundreds of people, are making it up. Now, the planets, they all won't be like Earth, and so life itself won't be like Earth, if you stop and think about it. Even the Vatican admits that, it may not be carbon-based life at all. In fact, the Vatican is one of the places that is very open to the fact that there's life in other places. And so I just wanted to get into that for a little bit and talk to you about the fact that, UFOs, there's hundreds, thousands of sightings by now. It's been going on for a long time. We're talking about colonels in the Air Force and on down, major officers that have seen many things in combat, and they can come back and tell you about their UFO experiences. Now, they're discouraged by the FAA, and that's one of the strange things. Why does the FAA not even want to hear about a UFO report? They forward them on to several different UFO sighting places, as you well know, and we've done many shows with many of the people that operate those, and we plan to do more. Speaking of future shows, we expect to be live in our studio, sounding 100% again in December. Probably, I'm shooting for December 9th, and I know it's a long ways away yet, but we plan to do some more updates in November at the top of the show. And I'm shooting for December 9th when Larry Dickin, who started doing the UFO shows with me on this website, will join me. We haven't worked together in 5 or 6 years, but we're going to take a look at all of the information that happened in 2013, including some interesting sightings. A couple of things I want to mention. I got a UPI dispatch here that was filed 4 hours ago, and it's talking about a comet, Comet Isom. Comet Isom has come from the Oort belt all the way to the sun once, and we'll do it again. If you stop and think about that, it's the coldest place they can find in the solar system, and then the hottest place when it gets very close to the sun. This time around, in late November, I believe the 28th is Thanksgiving, on Thanksgiving Day, it will be the closest that it ever has come to Earth. It passed by here last year, and everybody, including even the Mars rovers, are taking pictures of this comet as it comes through. The question is, will it be disruptive, like perhaps affecting our electrical grid? I mean, they are testing it 2 weeks before the comet comes. Is it a coincidence? Who knows? But the fact is that we have a comet ISOM, that'll be visiting us on Thanksgiving Day. It'll be there the whole week. If you want to see a comet, people expect you to see this one pretty well with your naked eyes. And if you have binoculars or a telescope, it'll be even more of a great show. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is Roswell. And we're all familiar with all the shows I've done from Roswell over the years. And Donald R. Schmidt and Thomas J. Carey, I call them Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, as I've been fortunate enough to meet them and know them well. And I've talked with Don Schmidt, by the way, as yesterday by email. And Don Schmidt passes his blessings to me about that. He hopes I'll be able to come back. And Don, had a very strong, dangerous medical thing happen to him several years ago. He had brain surgery, as a matter of fact, but he recovered. And I think I'm going to recover. Knock on wood. Let me knock on the desk. Everything looks pretty good. It's been a long, slow healing process. I'm still in a medical facility, and we expect to get out of here by Christmas, if not before. Schmidt and Carey have a new book out, and they're going to be on my show here in December as well. I'm not sure of the date yet. We have to make sure I'm up and ready and strong as I think I will be. But the new book is inside Real Area 51, The Secret History of Wright-Patterson. Now, the title pretty much gives away the title of the information in the book, but it's well worth reading. And it's really probably one of the best jobs of reporting I've seen that lays out the information that the revelations of the Roswell crash fragments and perhaps even the alien bodies are still around. And guess where they are? No, not in Area 51, no, not someplace in New Mexico, but at the number one place, the one where they flew the bodies and the wreckage to begin with, according to Roswell legend and Roswell information. I think you can take Roswell and all of the evidence we've uncovered. I mean, Schmidt and Carey alone had 600 witnesses. I mean, come on. How can they deny this? And we keep coming out with strange stories from the establishment about what really happened in Roswell. Well, I submit to you what really happened in Roswell was an alien craft crashed, and maybe more than one. So anyway, Don Schmidt and Tom Carey have done a great investigative job, and they come up with startling evidence in this new book, and I suggest you read it. It's out now, Inside the Real Area 51, The Secret History of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, they have the revelations in that book of where the fragments are and the bodies, and they're down deep in the tunnels, in the guts, in the belly, underneath Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. We'll have Don Schmidt and Tom Carey on, and we'll find out more information about that. And I think you'll find that a very interesting show. Tune in again next week. I'll try to be here live.
On the 30th day of September 2019, our episode, Area 51 in 2019, from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. We started out here with our late partner Jerry Pippin describing what UFOs are and how it relates to Area 51. We will put together a little synopsis here coming from Forbes, the Las Vegas Review, and the New York Times, several other publications, about an internet hoax that was placed on, I believe, Facebook, and 2 million people said they would storm Area 51. but only about 150 or 200 actually showed up at Area 51, which is in the desert near Roswell. And we'll conclude the program with an interview of a man that was the editor of the morning paper in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. That was when they had the famous crash at Roswell, and he'll be interviewed by Jerry Pippin. And we're appreciative to Jerry Pippin's production for this, for these broadcasts that are provided. We'll put it in and modernize it a bit in the sense that we'll talk about the latest installment to Area 51, where the supposed spacecraft landed there, and we'll I'm just looking here at Wikipedia. Area 51, common name of a highly classified U.S. Air Force facility located in the Nevada Training and Test Range, and that is where it is located. And we'll get to it. Let me get to the Times article first, I believe. Now, the Times article here, this has been sitting on the cutting desk, or the desk, for a while. This is by Jack Healy. It was published on the 21st of September and updated on the 22nd that weekend here. But anyway, nonetheless, the title of the article is the Area 51 Raid, How a Town of 40 Coped with an Invasion. Nobody asked to rush the top secret military base. We just wanted to see people like us, one visitor said. There's a picture of the visitor there. The alien invasion was underway, and David Day wanted no part of it. Some 3,000 visitors were beaming into this tiny town this weekend, snapping selfies outside of the secretive Area 51 military test base, running through saged brush in alien costumes and dancing to the throbbing club beats as part of a virtual online joke. Bewitched to life, Day pointed to signs and nailed to his front gate in Rachel, Nevada, population 40s and 50s on the weekend. Go home, no Alienstock here. People in this sparsely populated expanse of scrub desert and sun blast of mountains have gotten used to conspiracy theorists, UFO chasers who make the 2-hour drive from Las Vegas, hunting for an extraterrestrial troop behind the secretive and secure Area 51 and leaving with nothing but an alien tote bag. I wrote a little green man toilet paper for the souvenir shop. But in late June, law enforcement residents had begun bracing for an onslaught of after 2.1 million people said they would rush the base on the foot of an event organized on Facebook called Storm Area 51. They can't stop them, all of us. The event, the creator later said the whole thing had been a joke, but online masses committed to launch anyway. Residents worried that even a tiny fraction of many of the outer-towners could lead to chaos, choking off the 2-lane roads and scarring the desert with trash and camper trailers, even draining the water table. People in Rachel moved out here to be away from the crap. That's what Day said. He's 61 years old. We don't know what to expect, but by Friday it appeared that the invaders have come in peace. Law enforcement officials said they made just a handful of arrests, including one man for indecent exposure after relieving himself at the Area 51 security gate. And not much there. Most people were heeding the warnings from the county sheriff, the state police, and the Air Force not to assault the gate of a heavily guarded military base at 3 a.m. on Friday morning. About 150 people made the 9-mile drive up a rusty road and surged towards the back gate, but most just left and promenade an invasion. The police officer stationed just outside the back gate laid down the ground rules. Don't cross that line. Watch out for rattlesnakes. And politely deflected the selfies from hundreds of people who drove up throughout the day. When a green alien asked if he could get a photo of one of the officers pretending to handicap him, the officer offered these terms: "Once the handcuffs gone, they don't come off." The alien demurred. They're hiding somewhere, Nelson, said 16, who drove from Alberta, Canada, to take in the storming, or not storming. "Maybe it's aliens on the moon landing set," his brother Austin said. Like a lot of people here, they were joking, a few visitors in alien goggles, and the then accepted reality that Area 51, part of Nevada test and training range, had been used to develop spy planes and not hidden alien crafts. But like the X-File poster said, they wanted to believe. They wanted to see people like us. Mike Main, who drove with his mother from Tampa, Florida, and they show a picture of someone in a van out there with some local residents spent a weekend pounding no trespass signs into the ground and stringing plastic webbing around their trailer homes. Don Williams said he had been won over by the visitors who had arrived from as far away as Massachusetts, even some from Australia. "I love it," Williams 54 said. He and his brother built a green concession stand, Outpost 51, obviously on their property. One of few African-American residents within 50 miles. Mr. Williams said he remembered feeling like a visitor from another world when he first moved to Rachel 25 years ago, homeless and looking for any place where he could find shelter and a job. He now works on alfalfa farm outside of the town and helps care for some of Rachel's older residents, including his 78-year-old mother. Anyway, Lucer Flick, who moved out here 3 years ago on Friday, and Mrs. Flick parked her scooter outside a dusty frontage road to watch people arrive in spacesuits, foil hats, and just printed T-shirts to claim they had stormed Area 51, a bargain at $30. I think that's pronounced Fike. Anyway, I don't think they are looking for trouble, as Fike said, but I know how to shoot a gun, and I've got weapons in my house. Boy. For days, the interlopers had been streaming into town in camper vans, RVs, motorcycles, and in some cases cramped two-door sedans that barely made a drive from Fort Worth. Since there were nearly no hotels for 50 miles, they set up tents in the dust, bargained with residents for a bedroom in a trailer, rented a $80 a night campus spaces, and some just pulled out a patch of empty land and slept under the stars. Retirees who roamed the country said they had deterred to Rachel and in nearby Hiko, Nevada, home to the Alien Research Center, where another weekend event featured music speakers steeped in the search for intelligence, life history, and the lore of the military base. Some organizers were discovering that online phantom didn't necessarily mean people would burn a weekend driving into the Nevada desert. The music at the Hiko site was called off on a Saturday after a few people showed up. And we have this here, the Las Vegas Journal Review reported, though the organizers said on Facebook message that they would still be food stalls and alien discussions. 20-somethings who had driven from Los Angeles say they were sick of hyper-commercial concerts and festivals and would be able to pull into a dirt lot where music was blasting from the stage and people were lined up for pancakes outside of one of the few businesses in town. The Little Ali Inn. I think Jerry and I talked about that place. We don't have a Woodstock, said Sepp Carlson 32, but I can tell my kids I did make it to Area 51. This is history. I did make it, excuse me. So that is it. Some of us acknowledge Area 51 exists, but about those little green men, This is a kind of an interesting situation here. Some of the other articles written, which we don't have, but we'll go to the Las Vegas Journal here and get it. One day was enough. A dud that day two was called off. This is by Michael Akers, Las Vegas Review on the 21st of September. But the tale of Area 51 base camp in Hiko took another twist late Saturday morning when a news release pinned the reporter's inbox saying the event would go on. The scheduled musicians wouldn't be coming, but speakers would appear inside the Alien Research Center. A few vendors chose to stick around. Two, according to the event's producer, that is Keith Wright, tickets would cost $51, were made free. This is truly ad hoc, Wright said. Friday showed a sluggish start for the two-day festival. We didn't see 10% of what we anticipated, Wright said. He said he was hoping for 2,500 to 5,000 per day. The organizers were expecting large crowds for a performance of Okaphone on Friday night, but only a few dozen people showed up to see the Grammy-nominated DJ in a rare rural setting, the Alien Research Center. Crews were still putting up signage after 3 p.m., despite an announcement at 1 p.m. stating the cover band played to hardly anyone. The lack of a crowd during day one and low sales, our event was successful with a major exception that nobody showed up. Wright said the days leading up to the event, organizers were relying heavily on walk-up customers. The event was one of two Storm Area 51 events sprawled by the Facebook joke that went viral. There were several vendors, art installations, Area 51 documentaries showing a mock Area 51 security gate. Those who purchased tickets for Friday through Ticketmaster will be refunded the $51. Wright and the Alien Research Center, owned by George Harris, failed to recoup the six-figure investment they put in the event. It hurts, says Wright, further down the extraterrestrial highway. That is State Route 375. Alienstock at a little Inn in Rachel Road on. There were an estimated crowd between 1,500 and 2,000 at Alienstock for the second day. Many festival goers stayed overnight in the Little Inn. Others slept in RVs, campsites, cars, and designated sold spots on the 30 acres owned by the festival organizer. And this is the one Jerry and I did. Little Alien Inn owner Connie West on private property across the highway, addressing portions of the attendees from the main stage on the ground. West beamed as she talked about the turnout Friday night. I'm speechless. I thank you so much. She was grinning. Thank you so much, because without you, this wouldn't be possible. Very interesting indeed. Let me just zip along here on some other stories here. This is Groom Lake, Nevada. I'm not sure what this is. Area 51 in the middle of an extremely unforgiving, isolated high desert is a secure military facility. Hidden within a range of mountains deep within the high desert is Area 51, a secretive military installation that exists as part of the Nelis military operations area. It's been a military test facility since the 1950s and well known for its role in conspiracy theories. As you will hear in a minute here, ordinarily known as Site 2, the ranch of this mysterious base is located where Lockheed tested the first U-2 spy plane, and they went on to test the SR-71 Blackbird, the A-12 Oxcart, likely to inspiration for many UFO sightings, and the F-117 Nighthawk. This location, the base, is famous for the most clandestine military base in the world. Consistently though, the snooping citizens are unable to get close. The area around the base is patrolled by numerous pickup driving guards armed with M16s, allowed to use deadly force if anyone doesn't halt on entering the base. As of yet, there have never been an incident, but a surely deterrent. Usually the guards call the local police, who dole out 600 fines to those curious enough to try and get too close. The closest legal vantage point of the base is peak around 26 miles away. You get very close there. For quite some time, no reliable aerial images exist of the base, and it didn't show up on any maps. But thanks to its fame and the existence of private satellites, you can now buy high-resolution aerial images of the base from private Russian firms, as well as from a firm, a private company originally started on the Lockheed Martin Iconis. Elements of the bizarre, famous yet secret nature of the base have cropped up as Nevada has begun to realize the tourism potential of Area 51. The state named the adjacent highway extraterrestrial highway, with nearby towns awash with extraterrestrial keychains, alien-themed hotels as a little alien inn. See what they see there. The minor league baseball team in Vegas is called the 51s, while the base is said by conspiracy theories to be the site of everything from time travel research to underground transcontinental railroad to a secret lab where aliens work with the government to reverse engineer alien technology. Located near the town of a tiny town of Rachel, Nevada's population 98, the facility has been approached from two directions. One close to Rachel to take visitors down approximately 6 miles of winding dirt roads to a guard building and a gate in the middle of nowhere. The other approach is 14 miles down Groom Lake Road at the at base of the Hancock Summit. The turnout marked by a lone stop sign there. And what degree it is, 37.414741 degrees, and 115.49875. Signs at the gate and border posts warn visitors an attempt to enter will be met with fines, jail time, and even deadly force. Now that is, so I guess none of us will be going to Area 51 there. From Forbes magazine, also Letty Voco, I suppose that's not V-O-Y-T-O, well, they said 2 million would storm the place, showed up, picture here. Anyway, although Facebook took down the viral event, the invitation to Area 51, only 150 showed up Friday. 2 were detained outside of a so-called secret facility. It started off with a joke. Marty Roberts created the event on the 27th of July called Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us, and scheduled it for the September the 20th. After 3 days, the event page took off with over 2 million people RSVPing, and another 1.2 million marked interest in attending. And according to the Associated Press, the event attracted 1,500 people to neighboring towns. Of that, 150 traveled within sight of Area 51. About 75 approached the gate. A little bit more details. 2 individuals were detained by a local sheriff. It's unclear who was detained and why, but although one woman allegedly attempted to duck onto the gate, and a man was relieving himself. Some attendees showed up at the gate as early as 3 a.m. in the morning, and people desire to be part of something, to be ahead of the curve. Critical quote: Area 51 is a place where normal, ordinary citizens can't go. When you tell people they can't do something, they want to do it. That's from the University of Nevada sociologist Ken Bora. In an interview with a local ABC affiliate. The U.S. military warnings were issued that lethal force would be used if necessary to keep people in Area 51. Anyway, What to watch for: conspiracies around Area 51 and its purported uses. All the rumors circulate about the base for decades. The CIA only acknowledged its existence. Now, they did acknowledge its existence in 2013 when a report from 1992 was declassified. It stated the base was used to test spy planes, etc. And no doubt it's still used to do some of those things. Now, let's see what else. This is from The Guardian, a newspaper of all places. Area 51, few arrests, few actual aliens at a party there. The Guardian writing about it. It's kind of interesting here. They had people here, promoters of the event around Storm Area 51, internet craze in the remote Nevada desert. This is the Associated Press, Hiko, Nevada. To them. And it goes on to talk about Keith Wright said after drawing about 500 attendees, a little more in each of these, planned for 5,000 at the Elon Research Center's souvenir shop in Hiko. I guess that's Hiko. We put on a safe event for people that showed up, but we had to make the decision today because it cost tens of thousands of dollars to staff each day. It was a gamble financially, and we lost. Several dozen campers still at the site, could stay until Sunday. Anyway, the event turned into something of a dump at a U.S. military unit. Apologized for tweet been used as specular of a stealth bomber being deployed. Again, any young people who tried to break the base. The tweet posted on an account of the Defense Virtual Information Distribution Service took aim at UFO fans and curiosity seekers who poured into the Nevada desert this weekend, and after an online to storm a U.S. military base, long rumored to house government secrets about extraterrestrial life and space ships, alongside a photo of military men and women standing at attention in uniforms at the front of a B-2 stealth bomber. It read, "The last thing of millenniums. We'll see if they attempt the Area 51 today." On Saturday, it said the tweet that an employee of the Hub account posted had in no way support the stance of the Department of Defense. It was inappropriate, and we apologize for the mistake. In Rachel, the little alien owner, Connie West appears again, said she was sad to hear that the Hiko Festival didn't succeed. In a voice hoarse from stress and lack of sleep, she said to noon to midnight state of alien stock music entertainment will continue to several thousand revelers camping on her property and nearby federal lands. It's the most fabulous time, West said, and I am just so grateful that people came, and this is an event in as much as it can be. The sheriff there, Carrie Lee, of Lincoln County, said it was pretty calm on early on Saturday in Rachel and Hiko. County Sheriff Sharon Wiberly said that no one showed up at the entrance gate or the auxiliary gate at the once secret facility. And anyway, she revisited to 100 each of the number of people who revisited anyway, a gate near Argosa Valley, a 90-minute drive west of Vegas. Lee, about a 2-hour drive from north of Las Vegas, said the rebels gathered around a gate at AM at two gates between Hiko and Rachel. And this thing here of some military, and said about 20 people broke from the rebels and acted like they were going to storm the gate, but stopped short. I imagine so. Lee and Wright reported 1 arrest, but disorderly conduct there. Early officers reported 5 arrests, including 1 man treated for dehydration by festival medics in Rachel. I imagine so, very hot out there. Lee said the man reportedly missing on Friday morning after hearing Thursday's festival campground hitting Thursday from a campground in Hiko. Was found safe that evening. The mood amongst the assembled remained mostly harmless, while costumed aliens that were common and sometimes hilarious sights in the event that began on Thursday. No one had reported seeing actual extraterrestrial type. So military types were there, and these characters in full uniform because it can get cool at night in the desert. And it even says here, photographing of this area is prohibitive. But evidently somebody shot the photo here, and so journalist from Reuters, Jim Haut, I suppose his name. Anyway, that's kind of our roundup of Area 51, the revelers being there. I think Jerry would have been really happy with this particular situation. Let me just move over here and see if we gentleman's name here that we have. It's called the Roswell series. That's it, incidentally, at jerrypippin.com. If you go there and it says UFO Files Roswell series, and you can see all these interviews. And he's Art McQuiddy. He was the editor of the Roswell Morning newspaper in 1947, in July of 1947. Most cities in those days, 1947, that was after the war, and ended in 1945. He's now 91 years old, but remembers events around the UFO crash like it was yesterday. Art tells Jerry, and here's a picture of Jerry, Art McQuiddy, and Charles Fletcher. It's a first-hand experience involved including the military base, the sheriff's department, and what made the interview so revealing is the fact that Art McQuiddy would become friends with the commanding officer of the base, William Blanchard, and Gene Dennis, and he saw Walter Hun, I think is how you pronounce that, and Jesse Marcel on a regular basis due to news stories that are coming from the military base. McQuiddy tells about slipping them out by Blanchard after an evening of drinking together. And this is about 25 minutes. Enjoy it. So on to Jerry Pippin's interview here in 2010, the Roswell series. I'm not sure exactly when he did the 2010, 2007. I'm thinking that if we look at this, I thought it was 2013. But anyway, it is there, and we go to the Jerry Pippin interview with Charles Fisher and Fisher and Art McQuiddy, the editor of the Roswell morning newspaper in 1947. A long time ago. We were not even born in 1947, but nonetheless, we'll bring it to you by the magic of jerrypippin.com. Do go there, in fact, and support that page. It's still there. Jerry died in 2015, but the page still goes on at jerrypippin.com, and that is the UFO Files. Incidentally, Jerry was one of the first people to use the term podcast. And it is being used here, and as Windows Media Files. This is old school internet radio here at its best, and the UFO festivals out there, and some of Jerry's work on Interception Radio. I was looking at the Roswell UFO Festival that was in June and July of 2012. One of the festivals there, and it's been there, and let me see. Abduction Research, and so forth and so on, the anniversary of the crash, 20-year anniversary. Anyway, all these things are there at jerrypippin.com. and his UFO shows. They are live on demand here. Well, they're all here, and all the extraterrestrial, all the researchers, everything you ever wanted to know here. Jerry explains why he does UFOs. Now, this is the one, this is in 2013. You heard it. He explains the scientific odds that other worlds exist, with over 2,000 extra planets already discovered by astrologers. And this was originally broadcast on the 4th of November 2013. This is one we led off with. So, we go. Nonetheless, good day.
Hello, everyone. This is Jerry Pippin, and we're broadcasting from Roswell. We are at the Convention Center, and we have a 91-year-old man here who actually is not old at all. Art McQuiddy, welcome to the show.
The 7th of July in 1947, I was editor of the morning newspaper, the Roswell Morning Dispatch. We had a small paper, but nevertheless we were out 6 days a week, and I've often laughed and said Roswell back in after World War II was a fanatic baseball town. The men of the town just loved professional baseball, followed it religiously, and so that was our excuse for being a newspaper. I ran the box scores on the front page of the Dispatch every day, because the guy's radio wasn't even that good right after the war. Mm-hmm. And so the guys they wanted to know what happened in the baseball games. Mm-hmm. We had a circulation of about 5,000 then, an old flatbed press that was 50 years old and sheet fed, and a hot metal shop, and obviously, but so it was pretty quiet. And then about 11 o'clock that morning, Walter Haut, the public information officer at the base, or PR guy at the base, brought a 2-paragraph press release in, and basically and I don't remember it because, well, anyway, it said basically that wreckage of an unidentified flying object had been found on a ranch 45 miles north of Roswell, and it had been brought into the Walker Air Force Base. What happened, 2 nights before the 7th, there was a giant electrical storm north of town, and we had one just the other night here, as a matter of fact. And it put on a good show for a while. Mm-hmm. And this old sheep herder who was up on the ranch up there, wasn't his ranch, he was just literally, but nevertheless, well, a decent man. Mm-hmm. He was used to thunder and lightning, but there was a particularly loud explosion, and he just assumed it was part of the electric storm. But the next day, when he went out in the pasture, he began to pick up pieces of something he'd never seen before. Well, that was on the 5th of July. It was on the 6th that he started picking up this stuff. And I don't know how much of it he took. None of us ever got a chance to see the wreckage, except Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer at the base. And I don't know what they called him back in those days in the Army Air Corps. But he took it over and showed it to his neighbors 3 or 4 miles away, maybe 5 miles away, and they said, "You ought to take this in and take it to the sheriff, because this could be something that somebody might be interested in." And I'm paraphrasing, I don't know what they advised him to take it into George Wilcox, the sheriff, and he didn't get around to it till that afternoon on July. No, he got it around to it that afternoon of July the 6th, and the sheriff called the Army Airfield and
So I guess that's how Jesse Marcel got involved.
So he came in kind of after work to pick this stuff up, and the story that we had, the stuff he had were pieces of what looked like aluminum foil, but they were, as near as I could tell, he had them. The pieces he had were in a box. I mean, you know, like so. Well, he took the box home that night, and his little boy played with the stuff, and they took a cigarette lighter and tried to light it, and it wouldn't burn, and you could crimp it, and it would stamp right back. And so he assumed they had something that it was off of a crash site out 45 miles north of Roswell, and perhaps it was, I don't know whether he ever related it to an unidentified flying object or not. But after he got it from the sheriff, but he didn't take it out to the base till the next morning. And when they started looking at it out there, they said, well, look, this has got to be, considering how it happened, the explosion or the thunderclap, this got to be wreckage of an unidentified flying object. Maybe, and I don't know whether he had seen anything or not. I just don't know. But Walter Haut was the basic publicity director, whatever they called him. Anyway, Walter and Butch Blanchard, the commanding colonel out at the base, put together this little 2-paragraph press release. Well, we had 2 radio stations in Roswell and the 2 newspapers, and I was the morning paper, so I always got the press releases from the Army Air Base last, because I didn't go to press till 12 o'clock at night. Right. Well, an awful lot of the good news stories broke around 5 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm. So you had more stories.
Well, we got them, although, and that's another, I could talk for a half an hour about my fight with the Associated Press. And the general manager of the AP in Dallas, I said to Governor of Texas, can go to the bathroom, we'll get 5 inches. If the president can get shot, and we'll get a paragraph from those guys over in Dallas. I was always fighting with them. But anyway, Walter had a good friend who was a part owner and an announcer on the new radio station, so he took the press release to him first. And this guy was not any dummy. He immediately called the Associated Press in Albuquerque, and they put it on the international radio, national radio.
You're right.
And I started getting telephone calls before I'd even gotten the press release. Walter finally got around to me about 11 o'clock. But it was a very exciting news day for me because I talked to all 3 of the daily papers in London. I talked to Paris Match. I talked to I don't remember all of them now, but I spent pretty much the whole day answering the phone. Calls were coming from all over the world, and I thought about it later, and I realized that even though that was 1947, the Cold War was beginning to heat up a little bit, and people were worried to death about what was going on between the Soviets and the Americans, and plus the fact that there had been multiple sightings of flying saucers reported, mostly out of the United States, but in other countries as well. So people were thinking about these things, and so when the word came out that wreckage of one had been found in this little small city in New Mexico, it triggered an awful lot of excitement
around the world.
And Walter called me. Called all 4 of us about 1 o'clock that afternoon, and he said, "Don't throw that press release away. I got to come pick it up because that wasn't wreckage of a flying saucer at all. It was the remains of a weather balloon." And I had been a Navy pilot for 4 years in the Pacific, and we didn't spend much time with $25 weather balloons, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And we just flew when we had to. But I didn't know I didn't have any idea really what it was, but and I'll try to talk fast. I don't want to take up your time, but the story was a gigantic story the day it broke, and it was the next day it was a dead story. It was the darndest phenomenon in newspapering for me because it was exciting, and then it was dead. And what I know happened.
Yeah.
And the rest is conjecture on my part, because I'm kind of an amateur astronomer, and we darn near find a new thing out in space every week, it seems like.
We're talking with Art McQuiddy, who was the editor of the newspaper in 1947 and was there when the UFO incident happened here in Roswell. But Art, you were more than just a newsman. You became friends with quite a few of these people, including Colonel Blanchard, right?
He was a very close friend of mine, and I'll just relate briefly. I flew PBYs in the Navy, a twin-engine amphibious bomber.
Yes, I know.
And by the end, by middle of 1945, we were doing almost exclusively air-sea rescue. My squadron had been on Midway, and one of our guys had been one of the fellows that found the Japanese fleet on the 5th of May in 1942 when they had the big fight.
Right.
And I think it was the battle that changed the whole war, because we sank 3 of their carriers. But I wasn't there, but my squadron was out there. And so I was 5 of us, 5 crews, 5 planes. We were sent up to Iwo Jima, and we were doing air-sea rescue with the B-29s to Japan. And people don't realize those B-29s are getting shot down too. They don't. And we were down on Guam in a I'll never forget it. In a big Quonset hut, and Curtis LeMay was there. He was commanding general of SAC. I don't know whether they call it SAC then or not, but later SAC. And he got up at the podium and said, and this was early when the B-29s had just really started coming to Saipan and Tinian. He said, you've been bombing at 30,000 feet and you can't even hit Japan. From this day on, you're not going to go above 5,000 feet. And I want you to do a decent bombing job, and if some of you get shot down, this is a war. And that's darn near verbatim what he said. He was a tough guy, I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. So we were dumbing the guys up to, and by that time we had one of us at 100 miles, one of us at 200, a destroyer at 300, a submarine in Tokyo Bay. If the guys got their engine shot out, if they could get out and get away from Japan, we had a pretty darn good chance to save them. And in the course of that, I had saved, I don't say saved, but I had found guys that had to ditch. And one of them, particularly close to Chichijima, which worried all of us, we had to circle him all night because we couldn't land and pick him up. The weather was bad, and the closest destroyer was going to take them about 8 hours to get over to pick him up. But this helped make my friendship with Butch Blanchard a really good friendship, and plus the fact that he was a delightful guy, and I liked him a lot. And being an old Navy pilot, I mean, you know, and weeks later, seems like weeks, it probably was not even a month, he and I were in the bar of the Officers Club late one night. You know all these stories. And every time we were together, I said, come on, Butch, now tell me, what really happened? I said, I know about the nurse and Glenn Dennis, and I know about the 100 guys that went out there and walked through the pasture, and I know that you closed the highway between Vaughn and Roswell for 2 days, and I said, I know all about those things. He said, I don't talk about that. But that night he said, well, I'll tell you this. I saw something I've never seen before, and I hope I'll never see again. Mm-hmm. Well, I sobered up in a minute. You know, I was really...
You had a story all of a sudden.
I thought I did. And he said, I shouldn't have said that. I'm not supposed to talk about any of that. And he said, I got my ass in a
He was talking about the press release, right? I mean... well, he might have got in trouble there, but he was able to go on up the ladder and become a 4-star general before he passed away.
But he never would talk about it. And you don't. It's hard to keep track of in a time period like that. But later, there was a story in the New York Times, a national story. He had been in Moscow, Russia, and had gotten into a drinking contest with some Russian pilots, mm-hmm. and he said he could outdrink them, and he did. He drank about a gallon of vodka or something, according to this story. And I thought to myself, that's Blanchard if I ever knew him. He was a delightful guy.
Yeah, and you guys called him Butch, right? I mean,
yeah, his name was Bill, but well, he was kind of, short haircut and all that, and he'd been skipper of the 509th, I guess, and I'd saved some of the crews I saved were from the 509th. And
you have anyone else talk to you about it?
Well, not really.
Not on the record, of course.
Nobody would even talk to me, and I didn't pursue it that diligently because they say the story died so fast. But I don't know. Glenn Dennis now is pretty ill, so I doubt that I don't know whether you met him.
Oh, I know Glenn.
Yeah. Well, if you know Glenn, you know the kind of person he is.
Yes.
And nobody that was involved in any of this afterglow made any money out of it. I mean, there wasn't any con jobs going on or guys coming in and saying, yeah, I saw one. They got out and they shook hands with me. There was no lying going on as far as I know. And I love Glenn's story, goodness sakes.
He always stuck with that story, too.
Well, it was a true story. He's sitting down there at the funeral home, and the nurse he's been going with calls and asks if they have children's caskets. And he said, I don't know. I'll go up in the attic and see. And he said, I'll call you back. And she said, no, Glenn, I'm on a phone where you can't call me back. She said, I'll just hold. He came back and he said, well, we have 3 children's caskets. And she said, well, bring them out, but don't take them to the hospital. She said, I'm in another building, and when you get here, if I'm not out there, just put them on the grass and get away as fast as you can. You don't want to be involved in any of this. He didn't know what she was talking about. Mm-hmm. And I believe Glenn. He had none of us, and you know about as much as I know anyway, but none of us had any reason to try to amplify it or make something out of it. It just wasn't that kind of...
Did you know the nurse?
No, I had never met her. Uh-huh. I didn't know Glenn that well then. I later was married to a Roswell girl, and she and Glenn were in the same class in high school, and he and I did become good friends. And he's quite a talent. He was quite a talented sculptor. He made miniature sculpts like Raj Hassan over at the museum, and he had they had a very good farm, and
were you still in Roswell when they opened up that museum, or you'd already?
Well, I
know you got out of journalism later and got a real job.
Yeah, I got a real job. And
just teasing you. I've been in this field all my life.
We were married in 1949, and we moved to Los Angeles in 1950, mm-hmm. and I went into a new field called public relations, probably called corporate publicity for years, but basically it was a new kind of corporate field and a kind of government information field and they were looking for how I got into it. Jack Campbell, who was later governor of the state, came by the dispatch office one day and said, I knew Jack casually. He was in a good law firm here, Atwood, Malone, and Campbell. And Ross Malone, again, I'm digesting to divert, but Ross Malone was later vice president and general counsel of General Motors, and also the youngest president of the American Bar Association they've ever had. And here he is, a Roswell lawyer and a delightful guy. And Jack said, anyway, he said, I'm running the Oil and Gas Association here, and he said, I'm going back to private law practice, and the company, the association is looking for what they call public relations, and they're trying to hire newspaper editors to do it. Would you be interested in the job? And I said, well, how much does it pay?
Right.
I'm getting ready to get married, and so I left the paper and became secretary of the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association, which basically, fundamentally, the job was lobbying in the legislature. And at that time, you didn't have to have a pass or anything. There were only three of us.
Yeah, you could just go see anybody, right?
Yeah, well, the three of us that were lobbyists. The vice president of Kennecott Copper from Silver City was their lobbyist, and then the Nature Pass had a lobbyist, and that we were it. So,
Art, you were an eyewitness to history back in 1947, and you've had plenty of time to think about it. You really believe something happened out there? I mean, an E.T. flying saucer.
As we talked about this around town after the fact, Barbara and Bob Anderson, our local billionaire, they stopped their car coming back from Santa Fe one day and watched the flying saucer. And another oil man, Bert Murphy, and his wife Martha, very, very dependable people. He had his own little private plane. They were coming back from Artesia and stopped twice to see flying saucers. And probably the most conservative guy in Roswell owned a hardware store, Wilmot Hardware Store, and Hinton Wilmot was rocking on his front porch and saw a flying saucer.
So they were around.
Well, reputable people were people. Bob Anderson spent his life in an airplane after he was chairman of Atlantic Richfield, and I've never talked to Barbara about it, but he told me about it once, and so, such as it was. But it was and I just happen to believe that it's.
You're convinced it's real, right?
Periodically, you'll see a little squib. Now, as recent as sometime last year, they had multiple sightings down off of Perth, Australia. Well, that's the end of the world. If you know where Perth is, I mean, God, it
makes Roswell look like a real urban area.
Well, they're just way down on the other side of Australia, all by themselves, and it wouldn't be a bad place to be. As a matter of fact, Roswell's not a bad place. Basically, that's what little I know about it. But we had a secretary or vice president, chairman of the paid employee of the Roswell Chamber of Commerce, and he had been a base, out at the base, an enlisted man, and he was one of the 100 that they took up and walked through the pasture home. He said had their arms linked together, so looking for more wreckage, and
so that's a lot of effort to look for a weather.
Well, there was then a lot of efforts to look for a damn $25 weather.
And I think with that, we'll leave the. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.